Look, if you really want to see a total mess, you must consider the South African learning industry. What I mean with the learning industry are schools, universities, the South African Qualification Authority, the SETAs, and all other mechanisms designed and implemented to monopolize education in the country, and with it, the billions of rands poured into it. Just a side note disclaimer, I am not an educational expert, but I have been a part-time university lecturer for 20 years, and I have trained working adults in the SETA and higher education accreditation system for even longer. I have lived and worked through all the changes since the 1994 transition. It has been a mess. To start with, I am not intending to offend any of the truly committed, well-qualified, and competent teachers or lecturers that do their best to make the system work, on a daily basis, and under difficult circumstances. In fact, part of the system, such as former Model C schools, are working well and deliver excellent value. Similarly, on an operational level, hundreds of ordinary universities and college lecturers offer good quality teaching to students. That is not where the problem lies. The problem lies with the system. For the control freaks of the ANC and its ideological co-conspirators, the educational system is a tool to brainwash and to pursue their outdated, failed national democratic revolution. More than that, it became a vehicle for self-enrichment and looting. Teachers' posts are offered for sale by teacher unions. In state schools, teachers often do not have the required qualifications. In fact, research has shown that they are often not even competent in the subject areas they must teach, to the level or grade of the people to whom they must teach. With a required pass rate of 30%, there is no way that South Africa will ever in the foreseeable future produce the knowledge, resources, and expertise to lift the country out of its current cycle of steady decline and gradual collapse. There may be a few shining stars, and my thanks to them, but those are not nearly enough to rescue the basic educational system.
Breaking yesterday, the Gauteng Department of Education has suspended Philippa Erasmus, headmistress of Pretoria High School for Girls, effective immediately and without pay. The suspension follows the revelation that her husband had been assisting with unpaid garden maintenance at the school, a move deemed improper under governance regulations. According to the department, the district authorities have invoked a disciplinary procedure after learning the principal allowed a spouse to perform maintenance duties typically managed by paid staff. Again, this is an accusation of racism against Erasmus, as the department alleges that she is taking away work from paid black staff members by allowing her husband to trim the roses for free.
My daughter's a matriculate school currently, so I've been on the governing board for 5 years, while my daughter's been schooling at Pretoria High School for Girls. Absolutely beautiful school. We sent her there for a particular reason, for heritage, for tradition. We moved her from a private school into Pretoria High School for Girls, and it is the best decision we ever made for her as an individual. And I'm quite an involved dad, so obviously put my hand up very early on to help out at the school, and became part of the school governing board and never looked back.
Now, Mike will have some of his own thoughts in a moment, and we'll get onto that. But his wife has been through the ringer, through the political machinations that have been going on. Why is it that the politicians have particularly, they seem to be picking on her, on Philippa, and in particular on Pretoria High School for Girls? You must have given this a heck of a lot of thought and maybe even discussed it in governing body meetings.
No, we have. It's very distressing. Ultimately, the end goal should be the girls, the learners, and it seems like there's definitely an adult political agenda player. We as a school have unfortunately been party to the headlines before. It's, we call it the Olympic cycle. So in 2016, we had the hair issue. In 2020, we had the Black Lives Matter issue. And now in 2024, which was last year, we had this further issue. And what's very distressing, Alex, is that we have a 91% bachelor's pass rate versus a national average of 50% and a Gauteng average of 48%. We have a 99.9% matric pass rate. Obviously, the school works and it's working well. I sit in those meetings three times a week, and the school is probably one of the best run schools I've ever been part of. And what's very distressing is that we have external members that are trying to tear down a school that is working exceptionally well. In my view, they should be taking Pretoria High School for Girls as best practice, as best learnings, and figure out how do we take this, spread it through the province and make the province better for education.
The Bella Act has been promulgated for one single main primary reason, and that is to give government control over the entire basic education sector. Secondary reasons were to get rid, for once and all, of Afrikaans schools, and to enforce the ANC's distorted, racist views on equity in education, that is, to pursue the National Democratic Revolution. Typically ANC and Lesotho, the act goes to ridiculous, outrageous extremes, including possibly imprisoning parents for not sending their children to the now newly compulsory grade R. What I remember about my days as a university student was that I had to take student loans to pay for my studies, including my accommodation and meals. My parents did what they could, and I honor them for that, and am very grateful for their devotion and sacrifices, but fact of the matter remains that there simply was not enough money for them paying for my studies. I did not drive a car then because, again, no money. I am referring to this point because, contrary to the belief in the country, not all white people of my generation study and live in luxury and carefree comfort. Later on, as my studies progressed, and I achieve academic merit, bursaries reduced the financial burden considerably. However, there was no NSFAS to pay for my studies, my accommodations, and even give me an allowance for food and textbooks. Student support programs were purely merit-based. No free tertiary education. I cannot put myself in the shoes of a black child, because I never was in such a position. My point is simply this: these commentators that are so eager, willing, and almost desperate to tell me about the suffering of others, for which I must now accept discrimination against myself, do not know the conditions in which I had to study and learn either. Point is, as we saai in Afrikaans, 'n saak het altyd twee kante. Not even the United States of America, or Europe, or the rich Asian countries, can really afford free tertiary education. That is why their most reputable universities are privately funded ones, including Harvard and MIT. South Africa's efforts to enforce free tertiary education has gone a long way to chase away some of its best academics, and specifically researchers, and have resulted in the deterioration of tertiary education in the country, especially given the fact that overeager, self-appointed moralist and race guardians deployed as administrators at universities couldn't wait to accuse reputable academics in scarce skills professions of racism, chasing them away even faster. I don't necessarily think the quality of scholastic standards, that is, everyday teaching and learning at tertiary academic institutions, have deteriorated over the years. I think it has remained more or less the same. This is the thing about the academic world. It's about theory, not practice. As long as you have the required theoretical and teaching knowledge, let's face it, that boils down to the philosophical understanding of a subject matter, and the ability to teach it to others, university learning will remain more or less the same, even over the ages. It is true that some academic institutions, such as Harvard University and MIT, again, sorry about constantly referring to the same institutions, have developed remarkable reputations for producing scholars that actually achieve much better than average success rate in their chosen professional fields. Both MIT and Harvard can rightfully cite reliable research data that show the students they have produced as above average successful in the field of practice. Their research puts are excellent. The state of collapse in South Africa is a reflection of the inability of the country's academic institutions to add value to the country's economy and competitiveness. What truly determines the quality of a university is its ability to run a smooth, high-quality governance structure in an academic institution, which include affording and attracting the best quality and most reputable academics, and let the institution's reputation precedes it. The second requirement for excellence is research outputs. For that if there were ever disastrous failures, it is the CETAs. Back in the mid-1990s, when I started my career in the public sector, academic institutions offer the officially recognized academic qualifications useful for promotion and appointment in the public sector. As a different, distinct function, private companies offered training, but more often experience-based conferences and seminars. Internal courses were offered that were very practical in nature and task-based, and the completion thereof required for profession-specific career advancement. This system worked very well. Actually, if I would express any critique on it, it will be that the allowance made for career advancement based on academic qualifications was the weak link in the system. Internal courses were excellent and very much task-specific. There was logical structure in the design. Internal training taught workplace skills, while private service providers allowed to offer supplementary workshops and conferences with nationally and even internationally renowned experts that shared insights and in-depth knowledge with practitioners on a level of experience and professional development adequately equipped to really benefit the employer. Then suddenly, it was all thrown out of the window to be replaced by this ideologically driven rubbish of educational events that must be CETA accredited. Apparently, the idea was that all courses about a specific subject matter must be taught across the country and professions, to teach learners the same skills and competencies. The central authority in this model was to be the South African Qualifications Authority. Problem is just that, more often than comfortable for the common good, the so-called experts accepted by the South African Qualifications Authority were way too academic, and way too often simply not experienced and competent enough to develop material to be taught to all, in a standard format, across sectors and industries. More than that, so-called standardization is all about socialist control, and never a good idea. Training and competency building must be context and situation specific. Then suddenly, it was all thrown out of the window to be replaced by this ideologically driven rubbish of educational events that must be CETA accredited. Apparently, the idea was that all courses about a specific subject matter must be taught across the country and professions, to teach learners the same skills and competencies. The central authority in this model was to be the South African Qualifications Authority. Problem is just that, more often than comfortable for the common good, the so-called experts accepted by the South African Qualifications Authority were way too academic, and way too often simply not experienced and competent enough to develop material to be taught to all, in a standard format, across sectors and industries. More than that, so-called standardization is all about socialist control, and never a good idea. Training and competency building must be context and situation specific.